Welcome, everybody, to Heretical Weekends number 39. Joined as always, I am Mischievous Heathen with Run Gavagai Run and Turtle 2080th. We're perpetually late, but that's not our fault this time. I think we're going to blame Google on this one because Google sucks with their YouTube changes and their Hangout changes. And maybe I'm just dumb, but this is a pain in the ass to get started today. Thank you for coming to my defense, fellas. Thank you.
It's not you. It's not you.
Google likes to throw out the curveballs, so we have to try and figure it out as we go every time.
Yeah. So, hey, Turtle, you sound far away by chance, just so you know.
Hold on a second.
Oh, that's better. Oh, yeah. Sweet, sexy voice, Turtle. I'm playing with my belly button as we speak.
Why is that?
I don't know. Don't judge me.
3:3. I tell you the truth. No one can see the kingdom of God unless he is born again.
Is that the Jesus doll speaking?
Yeah.
Nice. We got to get that on a soundbite.
Yeah, I know.
Turtle.
Oh, no.
On, Turtle?
He's gone.
No! Damn it.
He'll come back.
He always comes back.
There he is.
Check. Microphone check.
Oh, there you go.
1, 2, checka.
Okay.
Nice. Give us some of that sweet.
All right, I'm ready. Let's go live.
Yeah, he's back. All right, so before we forget, fuck Arcane Logos, because if I always forget that, but he's an asshole and a piece of shit, and so yeah. So we were gone last week, and we were busy pretty much, and I was sick, and everyone had stuff to do, so we postponed to this week, and Gavagai was kind enough to pick out some topics for us because Turtle and I stared at each other for about 5 minutes and went, "Yeah, we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait for Gavagai." So you sent us an interesting video. I didn't get to watch it actually because I've been super busy at work and drinking. But it, you had sent me a video about this preacher guy who you said was, you knew him personally, and he was one of your old preachers.
Well, that's not exactly right. He was never a minister like in the church when I was there, but he got a degree and went to be a kind of like a missionary. But he works with like campus for like some kind of campus program with the Assemblies of God denomination, but he's positioned or placed at like Stanford University, or at least that's where he went after I knew him.
Okay, but you did know him personally.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
which I found it kind of interesting because most of the shows and stuff talk about topics, but rarely do they talk about anything personal. Like, I know that guy. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And he's a very smart guy. He's very well read. He studied a lot of philosophy and apologetics, and in what I think is has been a very sincere attempt to learn to kind of justify his faith and explain it and understand why he believes the things that he believes. So in that regard, I have a high degree of respect for him. He also was influential for me. He taught a kind of like an adult Bible study class or a Sunday school class at the church that I went to, and he would go through a lot of different kind of apologetics approaches and arguments for the existence of God or for Christianity, and would say, this is a bad argument, here's why, bam, bam, bam. And then, so he would go through all of these different things and say, well, like, he would say, like what's the what's the real common one that a lot of people throw out there when they, don't know what they're talking about?
Islam.
No, no,
Oh.
that's at least a little bit more sophisticated. It's where people say, oh,
Watchmaker.
no, the wager,
Pascal's wager.
Pascal's wager. Thank you. Yeah. So
They're also equally stupid to me. That I just
yeah. Well, I mean that one's it's particularly bad and weak and has problems. Not that the others don't, but and that one kind of comes across. It's more intuitive, and people are making it without even knowing that they're making, this Pascal's wager thing. So
did the video have any actual relevance to any particular topic about the study you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the particular video that I shared with you guys was kind of a sermon or lecture that he gave to some of his students at Stanford University who were involved with this. I think it's called Campus Crusade. And so he was addressing the issue, kind of the tension in the New Testament, in some of the epistles, about whether or not women should be allowed to teach. And, if you look at some of the pastoral epistles, they, in some cases, seem like they're saying, women shut up in church, don't let them talk, they shouldn't ever teach men. They should be quiet in the church. If she's got an idea, she should tell her husband so that he can go in. And then and it even makes the case that he said the reason the author of, I don't know if it's 1st or 2nd Timothy, but the reason he gives for in support of that that women should be quiet is that Adam was made first. And also Eve was deceived by Satan in the garden, and so she should take a back seat and just shut up and listen.
Oh, that's it. I'm a Christian now.
So, and then going, he points to other verses where Paul is sending teachers to a congregation or whatever, and one of them is Priscilla, who is a woman, and he says, greet her and welcome her. She knows what she's talking about. Listen to Priscilla, because she's, she gets it. She knows what stuff is right, and she'll teach you. So there's this conflict. Is it okay for women to teach, or is it not? And so he takes a look at this, and the argument that this guy makes, and his name is Glenn Davis. I don't think there's a problem with.
No, you want me to just screen share the picture of the video?
Yeah, sure, that'd be great.
All right, even though it's your video, I'm just kidding.
It's not my video. He's got it posted out on YouTube, or someone does anyhow.
Let me see if I can find this thing. Go ahead. keep vamping while I look.
Yeah, sure. So the argument that he makes is, he says, well, if you study this and look at it closely, on the surface, it sure sounds like he's making this universal appeal to the way, the creations, the beginning of creation, and the way, Yahweh set things in motion involved, it was such that women should be quiet because of the way things were created. And so that's an argument about, a universal principle that's true for all time, right? But then, you have this conflict when he's sending people. So how do you make sense of this? How do you live? Well, his argument is, look, when you look at the churches where Paul makes these kinds of admonitions saying, don't let women speak, it's all in the more conservative eastern parts of the world and of the Christian world. So there it is. So you white box yourself so that stays up so people can see it.
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't see it.
What? Damn you, Google!
Did you white box yourself, Ethan?
I did white box myself.
Okay, well,
Is it? Can you see it?
yeah, I can see it.
I only see it when you're talking, Heathen. I see Gavagai when Gavagai talks.
Here, let me. White box. For the
There.
win. Is that better,
Okay.
Turtle, or is it still down?
I don't know.
He
say
won't know.
something.
He won't know until I say stuff.
No, it's still Gavagai.
Well,
Oh, okay.
anyways,
Well, anyway.
they can see it. So yeah, it's called Thinking About Women in Ministry dash the cultural backdrop, and this was from back in 2007. So it gives you some idea of this is almost 10 years ago now. But I was impressed with his argument. He said what he said was when you look at the locations of the churches where Paul tells people, be quiet, women, or he tells them, okay, it's okay for women to be involved in ministry, or listen to Priscilla. That those kinds of things happened in the western portion of the Christian world that Paul was writing to, where things were more liberal and women had bigger role in society. So he was saying, well, this is it seemed like there must be a cultural element, but how do you address the issue of why he makes this appeal to something that seems like it would be universal, and what Glenn's argument is there is that this is just kind of part of first century rhetoric, that you make these kinds of appeals so that people will listen to you, and it's not so much that it's getting at some real genuine truth or whatever, but that it's and he articulates this much better than I can probably, but in essence it's just saying, well, that's just that kind of like figure of speech kind of thing.
Now I got a question though.
Yeah.
So everything I hear about the fucking Bible from especially people on here, whether are we talking Old Testament? Is that what you're referring to, or
No,
is it
this is New Testament.
New Testament stuff? Okay, but I mean, ultimately, irregardless of the whole cultural, there seems to be a cultural, whatever to it. I thought these guys were all inspired by God anyway to write this stuff. So how is the culture even come into play? Shouldn't they just be like, yeah, that's what God says?
Well, there were some aspects of things that were cultural, and in some parts of even the New Testament clearly outline that things are culturally bound and are not commanded. But like Paul say, it's okay for people to eat meat that's been sacrificed to heathen gods. It's just meat. It's not going to, it's not sinful, whatever. But that if you go to a home where people are freaking out about meat, that's been offered to these heathen gods, don't partake in meat of that kind, and don't whatever, because it's better to have kind of harmony among believers than it is to insist on the fact that it's not actually doesn't become magical meat that's whatever. So
Paul's a moral relativist, apparently.
Well, I wouldn't say that either, but he it's clear that there are some circumstances where you give way to a broader principle in order to accommodate things, or whatever. So and he says the same kinds of things about circumcision. He says circumcision is no longer what matters. Some people are circumcised and some people are not, and it's okay. We're not under the law anymore. So,
but I thought we were always under the law, isn't that?
Yeah,
not according
well, that's
to Paul.
what Jesus says.
Right.
Paul disagrees
and
with
Jesus are not on the same page on that.
Right.
Yeah, but in all fairness, don't I mean anyone versus Jesus? Don't you got to go with Jesus because he's God?
No,
not if Paul's the one talking.
Yeah,
they don't know what Jesus said.
Yeah, Paul never met Jesus. I mean,
that's true. Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
He got blinded by him on the road to Damascus. So
allegedly.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, fuck, dude.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. He got Jesus fucked.
Is that Jesus? You know you're in trouble when you got Jesus fucked.
Yeah.
So-
I managed to actually. I was watching the video while I was waiting for you guys to figure out this new Google Hangout situation.
Cool.
I didn't finish it, but I did get to like up till like 30 minutes into it. But
Holy shit!
but
Took
yeah,
us
so
a while to figure out the Google Plus.
well, I started a little bit before the
Yeah.
show, but was supposed to start. But yeah, he starts out by talking about a game of sorts. I don't remember what he called it, but
Thrones.
it's basically where a person lists three seemingly unrelated things, and then you're supposed to figure out what the connecting thing is. And I'm trying to think of a couple examples, but
Like dirt, mountain.
and then 10 speed.
Yeah.
And
so
the connecting thing in that case is bike.
yeah.
And the reason he brings it up, and that was one example, and there's a couple other ones, but the reason he brings that up is because he reads these these two passages that were from Paul, which are clearly putting women in a subordinate position and basically telling them to be quiet. And then he, tries to say, well, we have these two data points, but maybe there's a more data points that can give us a better understanding of it. And that's kind of what Gavagai was getting into there.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a big reason why, and the one of those passages for sure is from 2 Timothy, and that's why that's a big reason why most biblical scholars think that Paul didn't actually write that letter, that it's a forgery. But of course, a Christian, especially, I don't think this guy would. Well, I don't know if he would say that he believes that the Bible is inerrant. I did not get that impression. But,
yeah, no, I think he does believe that the Bible is inerrant when properly understood.
Okay, so the Bible is inerrant. It's just that we don't quite understand why it contradicts itself.
I love that excuse.
I
love that excuse so much. Is it weird that I saw the video and I was like, and this maybe just because I've been on the West Coast for too long, but as soon as I saw the video, I'm like, I don't like his shirt. I'm not going to watch this video.
That's a mistake.
Ridiculous. No, I really didn't have the time. Now I realize it was 40 minutes when you said when you said it was 30. I was like, holy shit, I forgot. I thought it when we send videos to each other, they're generally like clips or kind of on the shorter side. Yeah, we sent me this thing for 40 minutes. I was like, whoa, but I didn't have the time to watch it. So
I don't have that kind of attention span.
I don't. He does kind of look like David Smalley, though, doesn't he? Like,
yeah, a little bit.
If you take the goatee out, like, yeah.
Yep.
So, wow, okay. So, what's the
loss for words?
I guess. So, what's the point of what's his overall arching point here? Like,
well, if you press into things, you can kind of try to get it to make sense. I think is basically the takeaway. I think in this
specific case, and I didn't get to the grand finale, but it seemed to me that he was trying to explain away these verses that put women in a bad position in church. I think it seemed to me that he was saying, yes, these are here, but here's the greater context that we should. I mean, and that's a bigger. That's from being someone who's read Bart Ehrman's books. That always irritates me when Christians will say that this part of this book of the Bible. Well, you have to read into it like all these other parts of the Bible that contradict it or whatever, and And it's like, no, this person meant what they said in this context here. It doesn't matter what Matthew said or what this other person said. When Paul or whoever wrote 2 Timothy, they weren't trying to say what somebody else was trying to say at a different point in the Bible.
Here's how I see it, and I'm going to nerd it up for a second. So, because first of all, the one thing that annoys me the most is all these sort of weird ad hoc explanations, like Turtle kind of you were saying, where it's like, well, no, it's the context, and you got to read this, verse over here, and this contradicts this, and then
you have to read this chapter in Deuteronomy to understand this chapter in Revelations.
Right. And here's what it's like. In Empire Strikes Back, when Darth Vader and Luke are dueling, and then Darth Vader chops off Luke's hand, and Luke's hanging on that fucking thing over the pit in the Death Star.
And he says, Luke, I am your father.
Your father. Well, technically he says, no, I am your father. But that's
what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did somebody change history on me?
Yeah. It's like the Mandela effect just happened. But anyway, so, and then, for everyone that's watching it, we're going to go, oh, Anakin, Darth Vader, whatever, is literally telling Luke, I am your father. And then 1,000 years from now, someone going, well, what Darth Vader meant by father was, since he was the chosen one, he was the father of all the, you know what I mean? Like, it's just,
yes.
It's just like, since all the Jedi were destroyed, and he brought balance to the Force, so he was actually the father of all the Force users after the time. It's like this weird sort of ad hoc explanation.
I think that's a good comparison, especially because you have all of these other authors who have written Star Wars lore now at this point in time, probably hundreds of books and comics and whatever. And I'm sure in one of those somewhere there is something that could alter, and even if there isn't one now, at some point in time, because I'm sure that Star Wars will be written forever and ever. But there will be some other author who takes something, if not that quote, but something from Star Wars and alters its meaning in a way that George Lucas never meant for it. But
well, they can't anymore, because when they made The Force Awakens, they came out and they said that the expanded universe is not canon. So
but that won't necessarily matter for people in 100 years, because I mean, there was all kinds of crazy books that came out. Or letters that were written that were people considered canon, after the first couple centuries after the New Testament was starting to be written, and some of that was considered canon for some people at the time, and books that are in the Bible now that are now considered part of canon were not. And so, I mean, who's to say what's going to be?
First Clement is part of the canon.
Of the Star Wars canon?
Sure. And the Bible.
And the Bible. I think Star Wars is part of the biblical canon, too.
Oh, I would totally be a fucking Christian then. I mean, I want to believe in lightsabers so badly, you have no idea.
Yeah. Or and this is just my own thought that I had. I thought, and maybe it has been done in a book, but something like a backstory for Yoda, where maybe Yoda at some point played around with the dark side, and if I were to write something like that,
watch your mouth, Turtle.
That would alter, the way that Yoda is perceived, but it isn't what George Lucas ever meant, So that kind of thing is what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Do you think I kind of think the Hutts, were sort of like a really like some sort of Christian parallel. I mean, they live in the desert and they take women as slaves, and they bully everyone else around them. And if you don't abide by their rules, they kill you. I mean, it's
it's a straight line. Clearly, George Lucas is going after the Christians. If you don't get that, you clearly.
If you don't get that parallel, I mean,
blind.
What's the Sarlacc pit?
I That's a good one. That's
Mhm.
that's
Virgin
actually it's actually a parable against premarital sex because it's
that could be, but it's extra
You know-
confusing now because the Sarlacc pit went from being like kind of this giant vagina to being a giant vagina with a weird penis thing coming out of it in the
Hey.
special edition.
so, well sometimes sometimes you get drunk and you walk into the wrong bar and your vagina has a penis. I mean, it happens.
Fair enough.
Maybe only to me. I mean,
Out on the West Coast, maybe that
I have
happens
no-
more often.
no idea what you're talking about. I'm going to retitle this: "The Sarlacc Pit Has a Penis." Heretical Weekends number 39. Penises, Sarlacc pits, and so anyway. I
wanted to go ahead.
Oh no. I mean, I was just kind of going to go back to what I was saying before, but
Yeah.
essentially, when I hear stuff like this, I get irritated personally because it's whenever I hear someone speak, whether it's a minister or one of these fucknuts online or whatever, it's a constant damage control. It's constant, right?
Yeah.
And it's like they spend most of their time doing this sort of like ad hoc explanation. And I get that even if it was the case where it was shown that it was, it doesn't necessarily show that God doesn't exist, if that's even possible, whatever that means. But it doesn't help your cause, because if this is the book that you're following, but it's a constant struggle to even interpret the fucking thing, and you have to pull this out of your butt, interpret this a special way to make it work. It's like it's like you're taking a jigsaw puzzle and you're smashing the pieces together and make it look like something.
Yeah, on the one hand, I agree with that, but on the other hand, I do think we need people in the Christian community like this, and we need people in the Muslim community like this who explain away the bad things in the Bible so that Christians and Muslims don't adhere to the bad things in the Bible.
Right. Well, where I live on the West Coast, I grew up in the 90s, and we're back when gangster rap was I was in high school, right? That's when it was huge, and everyone thought it doesn't matter what race you were, you sat there and you felt you were some sort of gang member. You know what I mean? Like people sat around and they listened to the Chronic album, Dr. Dre's, and you just thought you were a gangster for no reason. But my thought was, where I grew up, where it was like, hey, look, dude, if going to church kept some guy from pistol whipping me and taking my wallet one day, great, But I always chalked it up to if this goober is gonna believe in this stuff and it keeps him from shooting somebody, then I'm all for it. Ultimately.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but I just mean in this case, because he is actually addressing a very negative thing that has had terrible consequences on society inside the Bible. And on the one hand, it's annoying to have somebody kind of explain it away, but on the other hand, if he's getting Christians to basically ignore this part of the Bible, and it's this context of something in this ancient, civilization that doesn't apply today, it's probably a net positive for society, I would have to say.
Sure. I mean, although I would like, at least for once, for some Christian somewhere just to come out and go, yeah, dude, I'd totally sell my daughter. You know what I mean? Like you never see a guy that takes it that literally, in America at least. On some level they just kind of know, they're like, oh, this is pretty fucked up.
Yeah. So one of the things, I mean, for a while, this was, I encountered his argument here toward the end of my kind of stint as a believer, and I thought it was a really great thing for a good long time. But since that time, obviously I've lost my faith and no longer believe that the Bible is this inspired word of a deity or whatever. And reflecting back on this, which this argument, which at the time, when I was a believer, I thought really made sense. it occurred to me, well, it's really poorly written. Glenn, the preacher guy, is able to articulate it in a way that makes sense, to at least to some degree, right? Why couldn't the biblical authors have done the same thing and said, look, you're living in a culture where it would not be accepted, and Christianity would suffer as a religion and whatever, and more people would go to hell if you embraced women in this way. But so don't do it. Keep quiet and whatever.
For now.
Yeah, for now, right. And then later, when things loosen up like it is over here, in the western part of Christendom, then you can be vocal or whatever. And if you really can't deal with it, just go over there. Women go where it's easier going and stuff.
Well, and I don't have the knowledge of this, but I was curious because he did at one point show this kind of map of the West versus East, and I would be curious to know, because I mean, if this is when Paul is writing, it isn't like there is a Christendom at this point.
Well, yeah,
but
that's true. It's pockets of churches, pockets of believers.
Yeah, but I mean, and that one particular is at least believed by most biblical scholars to not have been written by Paul, and would have been written probably 100 or more years after Paul. But so there might have been more. It probably was more Christians around at that point in time. But I would be curious as to know whether the western part of the continent at that point was Christian really at all, the more liberal part of the continent. But I don't know. That was just a thought that came into my mind.
Yeah. Well, and then another thing regarding the fact that it's so poorly written, how many thousands and millions of women have been suppressed over the course of centuries because it sure sounds like the case is being made that women should never be allowed to speak or whatever, and it gives this creation-based argument for it, and because it wasn't better written, all of these women have been suppressed throughout the history of Christianity.
2,000 years.
Yeah, and only now, when you kind of get to a PhD level of understanding of the region and whatever, well, now the real truth is coming out. What kind of writing is that? That's terrible. It's terrible communication.
Yeah, you think the immortal creator of the universe would have had a better idea of how to communicate? Yeah,
more clearly and give his true meaning, right?
I always say that God is a shitty author. I've said that for many years.
Yeah.
So, well, I think we talked the shit out of this one. Do you guys have anything else before we move on to the next topic? Because this is another Gavagai topic, by the way.
Yeah, I think that's it. And, Turtle already mentioned the fact that this is believed to be a forgery, and that was kind of the last point that I wanted to draw out. And I don't know what Glenn's view on that issue would be, but there's the bulk of scholarship about this now, even among a lot of Christian scholars, they understand that the likelihood of this 2 Timothy passage or whatever, or any of 2 Timothy being written by the Apostle Paul is pretty slim, and there are very good reasons to believe that it was a forged letter. So there's that too, and the whole thing kind of begins to fall apart very quickly when you look at that kind of scholarship on the New Testament. So
the Bible makes a lot more sense when you don't try and assume that it's all trying to say the same thing.
Yeah.
If you look at the Bible and you say, what is this author of this book trying to say? You can make sense of it. And it doesn't mean it's right or good, but if you try and force the entire Bible to be one cohesive book, it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense, and that's why you have thousands of years later people having to try and explain it. like like what other book do you have that like where you have every Sunday or every one day out of the week where everybody has to get together and try and figure out what the fuck this book means? There is no other book like that.
They need a George Lucas to come along and like just tell them like what shit means, you know? Like you think that would be God, but like George Lucas came in and he said, you know, the Force, that's just based off of midichlorians. It's not like a spiritual power kind of thing. And then the whole world like silently cried that day. But still it unified everything. You know what I mean? Like it answered a bunch of questions.
Well, and the reason that it's like that is because it's not a book. It's a whole collection of books that were put together, and even what what's considered one book of the Bible, in a lot of cases had multiple authors and
especially when you get into the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Isn't it like 42 books or something, or?
Yes.
But the 42. Now, how is it?
42 books of the Old Testament, I think, and then like 27 of the New Testament, 63 altogether.
So does each Paul whatever, does that count as like one book?
No, because Paul wrote multiple letters and.
Well, then how are the books differentiated? Like, how do you know it's like 27 books? Like, is it chapter 1, chapter 2?
I thought you went to church at some point.
No,
they're
okay.
Paul's,
I'm gonna throw this out there right now. I stopped going to church in the 2nd grade because I sat there in Sunday school and I was like, "What the fuck?" And I knew it was bullshit from the 2nd grade, and I never went back. So
when you're talking about the New Testament in particular, I mean, you have the 4 Gospels. And then you've got a bunch of letters, and then you've got Revelation. And so the Gospels are basically like story time, and the letters are letters primarily from Paul or people forging Paul. And you have the Acts. You have Acts in there as well.
Yeah.
Which is also story time.
Yeah, and that's part 2 of the Gospel of Luke.
But basically, I mean, a letter is just from start to finish, a letter that presumably Paul wrote to a church that he had established because they were doing weird things, and he's like, stop doing those weird things. And so that's how you differentiate one book from another. Is this is the letter to Chronicles, or this is the letter to
Corinthians, the Romans,
Corinthians, yeah. So
Ephesians.
Gotcha.
Yeah. and there are other authors, but Paul wrote the bulk of those epistles, the letters to these different churches or to leaders within the church. So 1st and 2nd Timothy, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John are supposedly written by John to various church groups or whatever, and the book of Jude, there's 1st and 2nd Peter, that's supposedly written by Peter, who was, by all reason, illiterate, so, but anyways, there, none of this is a cohesive thing, and most of it, there are, I forget how many of the epistles from Paul are actually believed to be written by Paul. There's a handful of them that are scholars are confident these were written by Paul, and then a set of questionable that are kind of debated, and then there's another set that's that's pretty much conclusively believed to be what they call pseudepigrapha or forged.
And 2nd Timothy is in that group.
Yeah, in that category of or that group that's not even really disputed.
This is why I fell asleep at church.
Well, they don't talk about this at church.
No.
It's just for whatever reason, right? Like I can never be like a biblical sort of I don't say biblical scholar, but like just the idea, just I hear books and letters and my brain just goes to putty. Like I just go, this is so fucking bullshit. You know what I mean? Like I don't know why, like, because you guys are in it longer, so I guess, for me, it's just like,
well, I mean, there's
bullshit.
history to it. I mean, and there's
That's true.
Just like Bart Ehrman. I mean, even though he doesn't believe, he still thinks there's value in learning about it, understanding it, knowing it, trying to figure out what happened and why. All of these different things, and it has been hugely influential on Western culture. Throughout. So
I'm not saying it wasn't valuable. Yeah. I'm just saying it's like if I came on here and talked about professional wrestling for 45 minutes, or see, see, and I'm like, I'm gonna come on and go, okay, look, in SummerSlam 2014, and Gavagai's brain would turn to putty like almost immediately. Like that's kind of what happens. Like I don't know why, but
see, for me, I have no interest in the contents of any of it, but I do find the history of it interesting, and I find the difference between the perceived history and at least what we know of the actual history to be very interesting, and we will never know the complete history of how these things got put together, who wrote them, what exactly they were trying to say or who they were trying to talk to, because it's been so.
What were their motives?
It's been each of the books has been so distorted over time by the copyists that it's just to some extent speculation as to what was originally written and what they meant and that. But I find it fascinating, the perception of these books versus at least what we know of the reality of the books.
What I find fascinating is the psychology behind believing the books. That's when you bring in the human element in that sense, like a modern person, like what goes into, just what goes on in their head when they're reading the stuff and why they understand it or how they understand it in the way that they do. That's what fascinates me. The content of itself is almost like, meh.
Yeah. I mean, there's interesting things in the Bible. I mean, because it's one of the oldest things we have, so it's interesting to look back in time and see what people thought, but
sure.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's interesting, but I mean, at the same time, it's not like most Christians are sitting there reading the Bible either. So
yeah.
Most Christians are like, yes, the Bible is important, and that's why I have it on a shelf, and it collects dust there. Oh,
nice. All right. Well, I'm all Bibled out. How are you guys?
we're gonna move on to the other subject, I assume.
Well, yeah. Eventually, because so this is I'm bringing this up because this is what?
And go.
Oh, okay. Right. And our next topic, this is from Gavagai because he's responsible for all the cool stuff this week. Gavagai, do you want to take away? Want to take this one?
No, because
okay.
I don't know what it was.
You sent me this article. God damn it!
Will your child leave Christianity? That one?
No. This is the one that says, or maybe was it me? Oh fuck, I don't know. This is the Christian charity rejected a donation from Atheist.
Oh yeah.
And they're now extremely behind on funds. And this was posted by Hemant Mehta. I believe he's the what's his name? The nice atheist.
The friendly atheist.
Friendly atheist. Yeah. So the post reads, to all my amazing friends, as most of you know by now, I am working with the social services rep for the Merrill Indian Children's Home. We are a faith-based nonprofit organization that relies solely on private donors and our annual powwow. This is our only fundraising event of the year. It will be October 1st, starting at 2 p.m. at the Bacone. Is that right? Bacone Student Life Center. We are extremely behind on funds and donated items for our silent list auction this year. We are also short on vendors. I am asking for y'all just consider donating something, anything. Okay, and it goes blah blah blah. God bless. So apparently, they refused a donation from an atheist group, if I'm not mistaken, right, Gavagai?
Yeah, yeah, and
I'm trying to find where it says that, but
the thinking atheist Seth Andrews on his show, he actually interviewed this guy, and it started off like somebody, I think they just came to his door, or and were soliciting donations, and he started off with, I think it was just like a $50 donation, but he made it in the name of his like local atheist group, and he didn't even know that this charity was, associated with the like Southern Baptists or whatever it was. Yeah, Muskogee atheist community. So he, they took the funding because they didn't look at his, like contribution in the name of whatever it is, the atheist group. They took his donation, but then he got a call or whatever saying, we can't accept this because we're affiliated with the Baptist organization in Oklahoma, and so he went back to his group, and they were like, well, let's give him $1,000 or whatever it was, and they quickly raised that money, and then that was still rejected, and so now they did the GoFundMe thing, and it's kind of gone viral and gotten lots of attention because there's supposedly, and what's worse is now, according to the article, the group is in serious financial trouble, and they're still rejecting this money on principle because they don't want atheist money.
This is so ridiculous because here you go. An hour later, he received a phone call from her. She called my desk phone at work and told me that they would not be accepting our donation because it would go against everything they believe in. The employee told Wilburn he would need to change the name on the donation in order for the home to accept the money. Wilburn refused, and the employee said that money would be returned. Wilburn says an employee of the home told him they are primarily funded by the American Baptist Churches Association. He and his wife are the co-founders of the Muskogee atheist community. Fucking ridiculous. Sorry, that was my
analysis.
my in-depth analysis. These guys are fucking ridiculous. So yeah.
So that people have pointed out, well, are you actually in this to help the children, or not? Because the money, it doesn't matter where the money is coming from. It's not like it's coming from some illegal activity or something. It's
it might be because atheists are immoral and have no qualms about stealing and murdering.
Right.
Now, here's my question, and I'm going to inject little to no intellectual thought into them.
Per usual.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry.
No, because here's my issue. So, hold on. Let me start over. But isn't pride a sin? Like, aren't they supposed to not do that sort of thing?
Yep.
First of all, aren't they supposed to?
Pride is a sin. I don't know whether or not they're supposed to take atheist money. The Bible doesn't specifically address that, as far as I can tell.
Well, there is a verse that someone referenced at one point regarding this story about how the Christian God can use anything to do good work or whatever, and even what somebody might have meant for evil, he can turn around and make it for good. And
that's
so by that, you would think that they would go ahead and take it, and like I said, it's not. Would it be some kind of public relations issue? It wouldn't have been. It's become more of that now, a public relations issue for the group than it would have been if they'd just taken, what is it, $100 or $50 donation from an atheist guy or from an atheist organization. now it's turned into a big thing.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if after this, though, like, I don't know when this was originally posted or brought to people's attention, but I would not be surprised if they then suddenly did get in a bunch of donations from Christian people.
Yeah, maybe.
But I mean, okay, look, I can understand if it was like, the neo-Nazi party or something along those lines, I guess,
But that's how people view atheists.
Right. And it's funny because I posted something, I think, yesterday to you guys, but I read this article where they sort of remember 10 years ago or so, they had that poll and where atheists were the most mistrusted group in America.
Yeah.
So I think 10 years later, I think Muslims have finally surpassed atheists, if I read the article correctly. But we're still up there. We're still up there, even though like the rise of people that identify as non-believers is like slowly growing. Still to this day, right? And so it's funny because, like, for example, okay, I have a friend who I suspect she's getting married, and I suspect I'm getting an invite to this wedding. And she's a great friend of mine. I've known her forever, but she went full Jesus on me. And this was a girl. She was a party girl, right? She probably, would have considered herself on the promiscuous side, and probably had some. She had a career, quote unquote, for a time that she can't let her church know that she used to do. So,
okay.
and but so anyway.
Well, I mean, it depends, because you can make a lot of money off of. It depends on how willing she is to talk about things, because there's a lot of people who've done bad things and then go full Jesus, and then they make a living off of talking about how Jesus.
Well, no, yeah, no. She. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but she told me that no one knows at her church because they're going to look at her weird and stuff and pretty much judge her. So. Unless that's changed in the last little bit here of time, but the reason I bring it up is because I'm gonna, if I get invited to this thing, which I hate weddings, and I fucking hate weddings, and anyway, I know that it's gonna be a shit ton of Jesus because I met her fiance, and he's a nice guy, like I like the guy, he's a nice guy, but in the short time we were there, he told me a Jesus story, not a Jesus story, but a Bible story. Now, so he's way into it, and so, but me going there, right, as an atheist, I already have that sort of like, no one knows, you know what I mean? I don't think it's gonna come up, but at the same time, it's like, I still have to go to this thing going, well, if someone finds out, like, there's always that, do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's always that weird.
Take you out and stone you?
No, not that they're gonna stone me, but there's always that thought, like, if it comes up, how I'm going to be looked upon. Not that I would care either way in that sense, where I'm not worried about it, but that thought has to be in the back of that thought is in the back of my head. The fact that thought is in the back of my head is enough to bother me, in the sense that, like, I shouldn't have to have that thought. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And so it's like this preconceived notion. They may go, oh, he's a non-believer, and just like let it go, because most people are pretty moderate, and where they're like,
where is this is still in California?
Yeah, so
wedding, you're fine.
Well, but then again, I have another friend who has a sister who's in a real hardcore Christian church where they have to tithe and all that stuff, and so they're like, against homosexuality and the whole thing. So I don't think she's in that kind of church, but at the same time, I don't know if anybody else, are they swinging to the right or to the left? I don't know. But the fact that thought's even in my head, is it says a lot, to me. And so there's this weird. There are some people, I'm sure, that still believe that as atheists we can do no good, or I don't know how the verse goes. Maybe Gavagai knows, but we can do no good works or something along those lines.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's the second part of that. The fool has said in his heart. I'll look it up here quick.
Oh. Yeah, but anyway, and that and with this charity thing, I mean, they're Baptists, right? So Baptists are kind of crazy, right? Like they're way into it. There's a lot of singing and shit going on.
So, singing and
Here it is. You ready?
Yeah.
The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have committed abominable deeds. There is no one who does good.
Right. And I don't know if this church particularly follows that. I mean, they're Baptists, so I mean, probably, but that could be a reason why. Like it's like taking drug money. Like you go, my drug dealer friend gave me $1,000 to pay my rent. Do I really want to? For me, I would go, thanks, drug buddy, for paying my rent. But they may not. Like they may not dig on that. But it's just it perceptions of atheists are very odd thing. I'm sure it's worse where you're at, Gabby, but
yeah.
Like, where you live, is there a chance that someone could like bodily harm you? Like,
that's pretty doubtful. I mean, yeah, there's a chance, depending on the circumstances too. Like if I was, there is down the highway from where I live, there is like a dirt racing, car track or whatever, where they go out on Friday nights and people bring in their trailers of their modified weird cars and race them around on this dirt track. And there's a bar there and there's alcohol there, but I'm pretty sure every one of those people is, a Jesus person and God and country kind of thing. And so if I went in there and said, yeah, Jesus isn't real, and anybody who believes in this is just superstitious and silly or whatever, yeah, I could probably get beat up. But that's not.
You went to a Trump rally.
Right, yeah, right. Yeah, I mean it's the
the
same kind of thing.
Even up here in Wisconsin, probably could run into at a Trump rally. If I just held up a sign that said there is no God, I probably would at the very least be yelled at.
Right. Oh, for sure. Well, let me put it to you another way, Gabby. Since you live in the crotch of America, just about, right? In that area.
The Bible crotch. I think that's the new name for it.
Okay, assume for a second you just had a plain black shirt and that said atheist in white letters across the front, right? Just read it said atheist. And you walked around town and you did everything exactly the same. Do you think, not that anybody would come out and like throw tomatoes at you, however, do you think at least it would garner some reaction? Like if you go to pay for something and someone's a genius person?
Yeah. I mean, I could, people, I expect that the reactions would range from, just disgust and shaking of heads or whatever, to I might get people actually come up and try to tell me that I need to repent or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. The reactions would not be positive. I could pretty much guarantee you that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I've often been tempted, and I may have even said this at one point, that Keith guy that I've mentioned on here a number of times, he has frequently mentioned to me that, or has suggested that, the world is so corrupt and that everybody hates Jesus. And I've wanted to, and I may have even said it at one point, that, he should try and wear an atheist t-shirt around town here where I live and see, where we both live, and see the kinds of reactions that he gets. And then a different day wear one that's, a Jesus shirt and see. I mean, we had dinner with my father-in-law a couple of weeks ago, and there was a guy sitting alone at a table near us that had some kind of anti-abortion t-shirt on, and my father-in-law went out of his way and went over and talked to the guy and was saying how much he liked his shirt. And I'm sure that that's probably very typical. And that, you know, at the end of the conversation, he was saying something about how you know, the Lord is good and blah blah blah. Well, you know, that's the kind of stuff that you could expect to see in this community. You know, if it's pro-God, anti-abortion, anti-homosexuality, it's going to be received by a much broader audience in a positive light. And if you wear something that's or display something that's atheist or whatever, you're more likely to get frowns and finger shakings and stuff, you know, finger wagging and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, see, here on the West Coast, you know, like it depends where you go, right? If I'm in Los Angeles and I'm wearing a shirt that says atheist and I'm out in, you know, Sunset Boulevard or Hollywood Boulevard or, you know, in any kind of those areas, no one would look twice at me because, you know, it's a very liberal area and there's probably a homeless guy taking a shit in the middle of the street, which is much more distracting than my shirt. I mean, it's, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's very, you know, no one cares. No one gives a shit. But where I live in Orange County, you know, it's a mixed bag, right? I live in a very ethnic area. I live in the white part of this ethnic area, but I'm just saying it's still, you know, around me, and that's a very ethnic area. And so wearing that
Taco
shirt,
trucks on every corner.
Hey, actually that's true, but I had a torta last night. It was fucking delicious. But anyway, fucking it's so good. Anyway, so you reminded me of that fucking torta. It's my favorite like food truck out here. And anyway, but how it normally works is if you know, there's still a chance that I can run across. There are people out here that hand you, you know, the Jesus pamphlets and stuff. And there's, like I said, there's a Scientology, the Orange County Scientology building is like right next to my house. So there's those guys around there. But if I wore that shirt, you know, assuming, you know, no language barriers, you know what I mean, in a certain part of town, I would get that same reaction. The only difference is that the amount of negative reaction I would probably not get a lot of unless I went into an area that was really, you know, generally culturally religious. For the most part, people go, you know, they're very moderate, like, well, everyone believes or not believes what they want, you know, that kind of thing. But if I walk 2 blocks in the wrong direction, you know, it's not so hipster that it's, you know, most people when they if I wore that shirt, that atheist shirt, which is a great experiment, by the way, I should probably try that. But they also put you in this group, this uber skeptic group, where, you know, it's the West Coast, so no religion, but they believe in, you know, New Age spirituality.
Right.
And so there's a lot of that out here. I mean, that's probably, if you go to LA, that's just as huge as I would say Christianity is where you're at, Gabby. I mean, everywhere there's chakra this and like I said, my ex-girlfriend was into that stuff. You know, crystals and burning the sage and you know, positive vibes and stuff, because things can be very negative in the big city, right? There's crime, there's traffic, and so there's a lot of negativity going on, and people really cling to this idea that, you know, stay positive. And then it gets in that area where it's like, you know, positive vibes and no negativity, one love, and they get into this zone, right? A lot of people buy into this whole spirituality thing. So you're kind of lumped into that too. Like I mean, and to be true, I don't buy into that shit either, right? But, you know, to those people, you're kind of just as, you know, that they would categorize me as closed-minded, you know, immediately, yeah. Right? So depending on where I go, the shirt may cause me problems, but I don't think I wouldn't have nearly the same problems you would, or even or even Turtle.
You know, but if you go into like Little Rock, you know, the big city, you know, I'm using air quotes, where I live, you're gonna not get the same kinds of reactions, especially like in the downtown area or whatever, because it's a mix of people and it's more diverse, and whatever. And
people mind their own business a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. But the further out you go into rural Arkansas and small town Arkansas, yeah, you're gonna get reactions.
Right.
So I wonder if that has to do with the fact that 75 to 125% of Christian children are turning against God, according to this, and that was a bit of an exaggeration. But yeah, I'm trying to transition here into the.
Are you segueing?
I'm segueing, yeah, into our blog post that Gavagai pointed us towards.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm thrown that you were actually segueing. Actually,
I'm disappointed.
I was like, did Turtle just do something? I fucking. So yeah, I mean, for me, I always see the West Coast is such a different sort of environment. I always said, or I always thought that within 5 generations, right? Like the political landscape is going to be hopefully more diverse. It should be, and these sort of misconceptions about atheism, this and that, should be more commonplace if the polls continue to grow in the way that they do. And I'll be an old man. I'll be dead by then. I'm an old man. I'll be dead by then. But it's a nice thing to hope for. You know what I mean? Like maybe we won't be trapped in this rut forever.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about this, Gavagai? This.
Since it's clear that
Turtle,
Heathen
fuck
doesn't.
Well, it's your thing, so.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we made Gavagai do all the work this time.
Yeah.
Well, I just came across these two things, and I don't even remember why exactly. I think I had thought about that Glenn Davis video recently for some reason or other, and I thought it would be an interesting subject. But this one I just came across in my feed somewhere or other. But so the title of the blog post is "Will Your Child Leave Christianity?"
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, and so it's a Christian author, and he's apparently his name is Brace Barber, and he's a Christian apologetics speaker, according to kind of the little, I don't know, what do you even call it, tagline under his name and the date of the post. But he's talking about how frequently children that grow up in Christian homes go off to college and then end up losing their faith. And the whole, yeah, well, and yeah, and I mean I saw it. The ones that were the most likely, at least in my anecdotal experience, to run into trouble with their faith were the ones that were brought up in the most conservative Christian homes and who were taught, that the Bible is inerrant and infallible and literally true, and were taught the literal creation account. I mean, there were times in, my experience growing up where people kind of advanced the idea that the literal Old Testament account of creation is true, but it wasn't pressed, and it was stated clearly that it wasn't like a salvation issue, and because of that, I think I was able to get through a lot, and hold on to my belief and my faith a lot longer than if I had been told, well, this is, do or die or whatever. But I'm kind of deviating from the subject here.
A little bit.
Yeah. So, but he talks about how kids, coming back from college, a lot of times, I guess on Thanksgiving break is when they kind of come out to their parents as non-believers. So, and what he says is that a lot of teens, were either kind of sketchy on their faith before that, or before they went off to college, or maybe didn't have a good solid foundation or whatever. And he says, here's what we know from the research contained in the book, The Last Christian Generation by Josh McDowell. And Josh McDowell is a terrible person who writes terrible books. I haven't read
that.
This
Could have been a whole topic on itself. Heretical Weekends
Yeah.
number 40. Josh McDowell's a terrible person.
We should seriously go through his what's his big
I've never heard of him.
Is he? You haven't? I have for sure. Is he the one? What is it? Is he the? Is it like something about the putting God on trial?
Evidence
or
that
something?
demands a verdict.
That's
I think
it.
is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
one. Yeah. It's horrible, and he makes the worst possible arguments. He's like among the absolute worst Christian
Nice.
apologists that's out there, bar none.
Throw me some.
No.
Throw me some links.
Okay, no, maybe I take that back. What's his name?
Ray Comfort?
Ray Comfort. He takes the
Okay.
he takes the prize.
I like
Josh
that you didn't
McDowell
have
was
to
second.
say anything other than implying that there was somebody worse out there, and I knew who you were talking about. That was all it took.
Yeah. So Ray Comfort gets the prize, but Josh McDowell gets a very close second, I think. And but anyways, where were we? Oh, the article.
Stay focused.
So according to the research from Josh McDowell and some David H. Bellis, who I've never heard of before, it says 63% of teen-aged Christians don't believe that Jesus is the Son of the one true God. 51% don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead. 68% don't believe that the Holy Spirit is a real entity. And only 33% of church youths have said that the church will play a part in their lives when they leave home. So in the end, what this apologetics guy is suggesting or recommending here, I guess not surprisingly, is that it's time for parents to get into Christian apologetics. And by the way, here's probably a book at the end or so that, yeah, Christian apologetics solutions and other books that he's authored or whatever.
Surprise.
Yeah. So
Let me direct you to my online store to solve your problem.
Yeah, so the world is falling apart, and there's one solution, and here it is. I'll sell it to you.
right. Yeah.
What I gather from this is, okay, I don't know about you guys, but speaking from, like I said, I stopped going to church in the second grade, but it doesn't mean that my mom didn't try to bring Jesus into stuff. But it's kind of one of those things where, if someone's going to push back on their religion, whatever, it's generally because it's keeping them from doing cool shit. You know what I mean? Like, you can't go out with your friends because Jesus, or you can't go to this place because Jesus, or you can't go to the dance because whatever. And then they go off to college, and then it's a whole world that's opened up for them, right? You got, sex, drugs, alcohol, but most importantly, education. So you inject a wider world experience, right? Different points of view, education, knowledge, and more human experience. And it's no surprise to me that people come back. Is it really a surprise they come back and go, I'm not buying this whole Jesus thing anymore?
Yeah, no, I am confident that there's truth to the claim that there is a higher percentage of people who are born Christians, or born into Christian homes, I should say, that when they get out of the house, they abandon their beliefs or find something else, or whatever the case is. I have no doubt that that's true. But this is, to me, complete scare tactics. This is completely just throwing these numbers at, this is aimed at parents. 63% of Christians don't believe that Jesus is the Son of the one true. How does that make any fucking sense at all? 63% of teenage Christians don't believe that Jesus is the one true Son of God. How is that possible? I don't believe that for a second.
Well,
I think
it's written by a
the
Christian.
church youths is what he says, right? Or teenage. Oh, it does say teenage
It says
Christians.
teenage Christians
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
believe that Jesus is the Son of the one true God.
Yeah, and you wonder what their like methodology for getting this, doing this survey was.
I think they pulled it out of their ass. That's what it seems
Well, no,
like to me.
You know what? You know what? It's when I see questions like that. Generally speaking, they're polling questions. They're generally true or false. And it says, "Do you believe X X X X X?" or "Do you," that kind of thing. And they click false or whatever, and that's how they tally these percentages. But the questions are generally very specific like that. You know what I'm saying? Like
I don't know. I have no idea what this.
I would love to see it.
This is from Josh McDowell's book.
Okay.
According to this, and I clicked around on this guy's blog space or whatever I guess this is actually his webpage, but I clicked and was looking at some of his other blogs and reading some of them, and he does link to a number of other studies that give numbers on, and I don't remember where that was at this point, and I'm not going to try and hunt it down, but that kind of backed up some of his numbers. But I don't believe that, because I think he says at one point 66 to 75% of Christian 66 or 65 to 75% of kids raised in Christian homes leave their faith when they leave home. I don't believe that. I wish that were true, but I don't believe that. That seems ridiculously high, because I mean, if that's
the population in other like governmental surveys and things wouldn't reflect the numbers that they do if that was true, right?
Right. I mean, and if that were the case, we'd be, I don't know, like 15 years away from Christianity to simply not being the dominant faith in our society. I mean, if you took 65 to 75% of the next generation and they're no longer Christian, I mean, that's insane.
It sounds like this.
But at the same time, I don't know what they might have a higher standard for, what they consider a Christian. A Christian is somebody who not only believes all this bullshit that I believe, but also goes to church, every Sunday. I don't know what his cutoff is for this number. Yeah, and maybe there are fewer people who go to church every Sunday, but it seems ridiculous.
No, to me, it sounds like what we were talking about earlier, which was this. It seems like this article is one giant scare tactic to parents, right?
Yeah.
And he pulled numbers out of his ass or some sort of skewed statistic, and then at the end of it he goes, "Yeah, but I have your solution right here. Buy my book." I mean, he has these inflated numbers, or you can't trust statistics out of the gate, right? I mean, they can be skewed to say almost anything. So, I mean, if these numbers are legit, which I seriously doubt. I mean, he looks like a huckster to me. I don't know. He's like he's like a less successful Eric Hovind or something.
Here, actually, I did find. I found. Let me load it. He links to this, and this is from the website coldcasechristianity.com.
Oh yeah, that's a different guy, I think.
So I don't know how reliable, but on this link here, it lists a whole bunch of quote unquote research related to spiritual life of teenagers, and then it lists a bunch of books and then kind of summarizes the findings of the books, which do, and I won't read through them, but there's a whole bunch of them, and they do more or less back up his claim, but I don't trust any of these sources either, so I don't know.
Hey, on Josh McDowell's webpage, you can request a prayer. You just got to put in your email and your request.
Good to know.
He's a powerful dude.
Yeah, that cold case.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Never mind.
The cold case Christianity guy I think he was like he was actually a cold case investigator for, I want to say like Los Angeles or something like that. Some law enforcement police department.
Is he the one that was in God's
Yeah.
Not Dead too? Okay.
Yeah. He was one of the guys in that. And I think Josh McDowell might have been one of the other guys, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Damn it, I haven't seen that yet. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah, we talked about it.
Did we really?
We had a show about it. You should really tune in to Heretical Weekends. It's a great show.
I fucking don't remember that. Oh, did we? I don't remember that.
I highly recommend it. There's some interesting topics, some interesting points of view, comic
Really
relief.
insightful participants on the panel,
Well, shit.
some of whom remember what they've talked about in the past.
Not all of them, though.
Not. Proceed. Forget I said anything.
But you were talking about the cold case Christianity guy, Gavagai.
Yeah. So, but he supposedly is like, this professional investigator, and presents, the case that Jesus did die and was risen from the dead because he applies the same kinds of, like tactics or whatever that he used when he was an investigator for these cold cases that were years old. Well, you've got eyewitnesses, he says, and people are reacting and responding to tell you, in ways that you would expect if they had actually seen X, Y, and Z and whatever. So it's and people latch onto it because he's a guy that should know, if this makes sense or not from, a legal perspective. And he's saying, well, this is, it's a open and shut case. Jesus died and rose again.
Huh, I didn't know that. All right, well, I'm converted.
Right.
Or reconverted.
Yeah.
That's funny. He wrote a lot of books.
Yeah.
Who did?
This
Josh.
McDowell dude.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was writing books back when Turtle and I were in, when Turtle and I were in high school and before that. Like,
it's funny. He says, on the Wikipedia page, says part of his ministry has focused on youth issues and relationships and sexual mores, and is reflected in seminars such as Maximum Sex and Why Wait. I don't know about you guys, but I hear a seminar that says Maximum Sex, I'm fucking in.
And you will be sorely disappointed.
I know. I think they're like, why did this guy walk in with a bag full of handy wipes?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, maybe we'll have a Josh McDowell celebration in a future episode.
He's 77. He won't be around forever. He'll be with his God eventually. Okay, I brought death into it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I thought maybe you were gonna like do the applause one or something.
No. There reaches a point in my I believe it or not, I do temper the worst part of my jokes, because I don't want to say too much of the wrong thing, but like I'm so much worse than in real life than what I am on YouTube. It's I don't want to talk about someone's death and then it comes back to me that I'm a horrible person.
Gotta keep that hidden a little bit.
I know. Like like people try so hard like to be. When people come on YouTube and they're arguing with people, like there was this Skylar Fiction had posted a video about Veckel and something. I didn't listen to it, but he posted something and it said, just when I thought like these guys can't make themselves look any worse, they did, or something along those lines, right? And I didn't listen to it, but I was reading the comments and they're going back and forth. I think Beckel was posting in there, and I'm like, why are you guys surprised? You know what I mean? Like how are you surprised that these evangelical, uneducated people on YouTube are saying stupid shit? Like, I don't, right? You know what? I'm like, you would never interact with these people like outside of here. And I get that it's a hobby, you do it for fun and this and that. And maybe if you do it once or twice and this and that, but every week it's pretty much the same group of people talking shit about the other group of people, whether, you know what I mean? And it's like, why do you give these, like, the perfect example of this is true empiricism. And every week there's some argument about evolution or intelligent design. It's always like, I can't believe that this guy thinks the third chromosome, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, who fucking cares? Who fucking cares? Because I'm like, even if he's wrong, or whether he's wrong or right, none of this demonstrates that intelligent design is a thing, and it doesn't demonstrate that his God exists. So you can skip all the finite bullshit, but it's like months and months and months of arguing about like chromosome X or, you know, genetics, whatever, blah 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 blah, and it's like, why waste time with people like that? I don't get it. They get surprised, like, I can't believe this motherfucker's saying stupid shit, and I'm like, is he a stupid motherfucker? Well, yeah, he's an uneducated asshole. Well, then why are you surprised?
Well, see, I think it's kind of like if you were having an argument with somebody about the fine details of the WWE, like that's something like even if in the grand scheme of things what they're saying doesn't really matter, but it's like they're getting this grading detail wrong, and you want to set the record straight with them, but it's just this kind of butting of heads in which they will not concede that their detail is wrong. I think that's what it is. It's just for you and me, you know, like the details of the you know, X chromosome or whatever they're talking about, like just kind of puts us to sleep. But, and not for me, but for you, if it had been about WWE, you know, like that would pique your interest, and you'd be like,
yeah, but I wouldn't butt heads over it for like a year. You know what I mean? It's like you can go back and forth and you can get lost in the argument, but you got, you know, at one point I'm going to be like, look, dude, just fucking go on Google or whatever, and I'm done. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me that they're arguing over the same fucking thing, or, you know, some finite, like, ultimately at the end of the day, right, you go, okay, assume you're right for a second. How does this demonstrate your God even remotely exists?
Well, it works because if they can disprove evolution, then therefore God exists in their minds. So
I understand that, but
even though that is completely false,
right? That's a complete non sequitur, and that's, at the end of the day, I just attack the non sequitur. I guess that's where I'm at. I just go, okay,
yeah. No,
right.
I am 100% on board with you, but
I'm 50% on board.
All right.
You fucker. No, I don't. I mean, I don't mind. You know, if there's like I mean, this is just for me personally, right? Like you know, if I'm gonna spend time where I'm playing like Overwatch or something, and I'm listening to something in the background, you know, I'm much more apt to listen to like a debate involving like where they're breaking down the argument itself over like, you know, some finite, you know, fucking detail that, you know, 0.00001% of the population cares about. And that's fine. They can do that. It's their freedom. They can have whatever channel they want, whatever fucking subject they want. I'm just saying, to me, it's uninteresting and ultimately pointless, because what they're arguing for is a God exists. I mean, so all the other shit is fucking moot to me.
Yeah. I mean, the one good thing, and they don't do this intentionally, but it is useful to have the one useful thing that creationists or anti-evolutionists do is they occasionally find something that is an actual interesting question that we don't have an answer for immediately, and they bring light to it, and then eventually we do find answers for it. But I mean, this is not a great example, but for example, like the eye or whatever, something that seems like it's difficult to that would be difficult to evolve. like because it gets highlighted, then I have a better understanding of how the eye evolved, because it's something that a creationist might try and attack.
I mean, I get like the intelligent design people have a tendency to not demonstrate their own claim, but try to like find fault in evolution, and I get that. But at the end of the day, like if I'm approached with something like that, I go, all right, evolution's false. Yay. Okay, now demonstrate how that means your God exists. I mean, and just fucking, why would you want to argue the minutia of evolution?
So I've got an answer to that.
Okay.
So because there are people who would hold up the apologists and say, look, this argument has not been addressed by anyone. Ronnie, if he was unchallenged and if he was out there, he uses big words and rattles through information in a way that's fast, and if you don't know anything about it, can sound like he knows what he's talking about to some extent. And if he was just out there and there was nobody addressing what he's saying, people could be taken in by it and say, well, look, this guy is smart. He knows his stuff. He's out there. He believes in God. He's explained it all, blah, blah, blah. It needs to be challenged by someone, and I'm glad that there are people out there who take the time to break it down. The people who know, on a technical level, what he gets wrong and are able to articulate it and things. Now, for the rest of us who know that that's not how science works, is some stupid guy on the internet going, rattling off a whole bunch of names of chemicals and things. That's not how science works.
Right. But I bet go out and everybody you meet, right? Everybody you meet, whether it's the guy at the gas station or the dude at fucking Target or whatever, everybody you run across today, ask them, do you know who true empiricism is? And they're going to say no. Right? Because nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit about me. Nobody gives a shit about you guys or true empiricism or G-Man or anybody else. We're a very small percent.
Here's the problem with that is, the people you run across, but the internet's makes it possible for these ideas to float. I would say that's why flat Earth became a thing, is because these people put out these videos, and some of them do sound kind of scientific and questioning these things, and for too long nobody challenged them on
because it's
the
a crazy
details.
thing. Why would anybody believe that? Why would anybody pay any attention to it at all?
And that's how it grew into the monster that it did grow into.
And I'm not saying there should never be any challenges, right?
Well, that's what you said.
No, I'm not saying there should never be any challenges. What I'm saying is, how many 8-hour hangouts does there have to fucking be? Like, there doesn't need, you know what I mean? Like, at some point for me,
I don't know how anybody does an 8-hour
like you can have like rebuttal videos or hangouts, say blah blah blah, but it's been over a year, and it's like, do we need 2 hours, 3 hours, or 6 hour weekly hangouts on these? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like never challenging these guys. I'm just saying it's like, for me personally, when I jump online and I look for stuff, I can't have another 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hour hangout of why chromosome X doesn't dissolve in water, whatever the fuck they're talking about. You know what I mean? Like,
I just think that we should retitle the episode of this episode to Mischievous Heathen thinks that atheists should not challenge creationists.
I never fucking said that. I never fucking.
I'm just saying that so we'll get more views. We'll get more views if you title it that.
More controversial views.
Yeah.
So, but it's, I don't know. Like, those things bore me to tears, dude. Like, just like bore me to tears. And so yeah, glad I got that off my chest. I feel
fair enough.
So
fair enough.
There should just be one segment every show where you guys just get me riled up and I just start yelling for like 10 minutes.
It doesn't take much. Well,
it doesn't take. There's a lot of things, like when I'm at work and stuff, people go, "You have a lot of pet peeves, don't you?" And I'm like, "There's a lot of shit that annoys the fuck out of me," and I don't know. I keep it all bottled up for some reason.
Hey, Heathen, who's your favorite wrestler
Currently, or
Yeah.
of all time?
currently?
Shinsuke Nakamura.
He's a pussy.
How dare you say that?
I've got a question. Who's your favorite wrestler?
Wrestler?
Yeah.
Oh, if we're going wrestler, I'm gonna go with Ric Flair. Actually, I'm gonna go NWA Ric Flair, old school from the late '70s, early '80s.
See, I
I'm
want
so
to. I
sad
want to
that
say
there was an
something.
answer to
I
that
want to say.
question.
I want to say something mean about him, but I can't.
How can you say anything about Ric Flair?
I can't.
So I like other things other than wrestling. I just use that as an example because generally people have really strong opinions, right? Either it's like anal sex. Either you really love it or you really hate it. There's no real in between, you know. And so
I can't believe that there are hangouts that are about wrestling, professional wrestling, like where adults sit around and
how
talk
can you
about.
say that?
I can't believe it.
Why?
Do you you participate in those? Don't you?
I would love to. If anyone out there has a wrestling,
They do.
hangout,
If you look on what's on like live hangouts, it's on there.
I watched a few. Steve Shives has one, even though everyone hates him now for whatever reason. Like I don't know why. I don't know when that happened, but like he has a weekly show on wrestling that I listen to when I drive around for work. But it they have shows about everything. They got shows about like Game of Thrones, like.
Yeah, that's actually entertaining.
Hey, wrestling is fucking entertaining. Like
False.
I always I always love having that. I had the same discussion at fucking work where everyone's like, oh man, it's the fake wrestling and all that stuff, and I was like, yeah, I don't go and watching fucking Game of Thrones or 24 thinking those guys are doing real shit either. You know what I mean? Like it's an entertainment show for most people. You're from you where you live. Wrestling should be very popular, Gabby.
And so is
Should it
and so
be?
is Jesus.
All right. Well, there's no accounting for taste, but wrestling is
Right.
wrestling
That's
is
all
real than
we're
Jesus.
saying.
Wrestling is way more real than Jesus is.
I'll give you that.
There's much more evidence for wrestling than there is for Jesus.
That's true.
All
Okay.
right.
Well, anyway.
My battery is about to die.
All right.
All right. So we're gonna end this broadcast. Well, shit. We should have opened with fucking wrestling.
Pro wrestling
anyway.
is like anal sex. All right.
Pro wrestling. Heretical Weekends number 39. Pro wrestling is like anal sex. Just give like a timestamp. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Have a good one.